This is the most up-to-date Nolan Wells piece of information that just doesn't line up. You've heard a lot so far, but this one is really taking the cake for me. By now, everyone has heard the recording of the SeaTow, which is like a towing company for boats that Nolan Wells' friends made. You heard the dispatch, you heard everything. Here's the one that doesn't make sense. Now we're being told, again, we got to be able to confirm it 100%. Right now we're at like 90% confirmation of it, that one of the friends, the grandfather called, or the father called, spoke with somebody and said, oh, they no longer need emergency assistance. The reason why that doesn't really add up or make sense to me is because the kid that's on the phone with SeaTow dispatch sounds like, hey, you guys need to get here. Like, we're taking on water. We're going to sink. You guys need to get here. What transpired from the moment that the person allegedly called and said, hey, we're all set, they're good, they don't need emergency services, to him being frantic on the phone? Did that really happen? If it did, why was none of the friends aware of it, and why wasn't it stated at one point on that recorded line?
Every single thing you are about to hear is documented. Every name, every discrepancy, every unanswered question comes from verified public records, official releases, and statements made on the record by the people directly involved in this case. This is not speculation. This is not a theory. This is the story of an 18-year-old boy who went to an island on the 4th of July and never came home. And the more investigators dig into what his friends said happened that day, the harder it becomes to ignore what doesn't add up. His name was Nolan Wells. And if you have not heard that name yet, you need to, because what is unfolding around his death is one of the most disturbing and layered cases to emerge from the Gulf Coast in years. By the time we get through everything that has now been leaked, documented, and formally filed in court, you are going to understand exactly why the pressure on the people who were with him that day is not going away. It is building. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here at True Crime Revealed, we cover cases like this one with documented facts, both sides of every account, and zero tolerance for speculation dressed up as truth. If that matters to you, hit subscribe right now so you never miss a single update on this case or any other we cover. Every like on this video helps us keep going and keeps us on stories that deserve attention. Now let's get into it. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and by every account from the people who knew him best, he was the kind of kid who filled a room. His mother, Christine Wesley, has described him as someone who lived out loud, someone who documented his life, who pulled out his phone when he was happy, when he was with friends, when something was worth remembering. She knew her son. That detail matters. Hold on to it. Horn Island sits in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Mississippi. It is part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, which means it is federally protected land. That federal designation is not a background detail. It is the reason the FBI has jurisdictional standing in this case, and it is one of the reasons this investigation has a reach that a purely local case would not have. Every 4th of July, Horn Island draws crowds. Boats anchor offshore. People gather on the beach. Music, sun, summer. On July 4th, 2024, Nolan Wells was there with a group of friends, and that is where the agreed-upon facts begin to run out. The friends who were with Nolan that day include Warren Hudson, Wyatt Pyron, Bart Edmonston Jr., and Tristine Shepard. Those are names that are now part of the public record in this case, and their accounts of what happened on that island are accounts that investigators, civil attorneys, and the public are now examining with extreme scrutiny. According to the version of events the group gave to investigators, at some point during the day, Nolan chose to stay behind on Horn Island. They said he wanted to remain there to spend time with a young woman named Katie McCormick. That was the explanation. Nolan stayed. They left. That was what they told investigators. On July 6th, 2 days after Independence Day, Nolan Wells was found dead. His body was recovered near Horn Island. He was 18 years old. 2 days. Between the time his friends said they left him on that island and the time his body was found, 2 days passed. That gap, and everything surrounding it, is at the center of every question this investigation is now trying to answer. The first major piece of evidence to become publicly contested came in the form of a phone call. On July 26th, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources officially released an audio recording of a SeaTow distress call. The call was made by Wyatt Pyron. On the call, he reported that the boat's bilge pump had stopped working and that they were sinking near the west tip of Horn Island. He told the dispatcher there were 7 people on board. He stated everyone was in good condition. He provided GPS coordinates and requested a tow to Fort Bayou launch. The dispatcher asked directly whether everyone on board was in good health. Wyatt confirmed they were. That is the surface of that call. That is the version everyone agrees happened. But then TMZ obtained and released an enhanced version of the same recording. And that is where everything became complicated. The enhanced version released by TMZ runs approximately 20 seconds longer than the official version released by the state. That is not a minor difference. A digital forensics expert named Robert Freridid went on News Nation and specifically identified that discrepancy, noting the differing runtime and the differing digital fingerprint between the two versions. He stated publicly that he wanted to examine the original metadata before drawing any conclusions. That is a measured, professional position, and it matters. What listeners heard in the enhanced version, in the background beneath Wyatt Pyron's voice, were sounds that many interpreted as panicked voices. Words that sounded like someone asking whether someone was dead. A name that sounded like Nolan. Voices that sounded like people telling someone to wake up and checking whether someone was breathing. Nancy Grace went on air and stated publicly that if those words are what people believe them to be, they suggest Nolan was on that boat at the time of that call, meaning he was not, as the friends claimed, already left behind on the island before the boat departed. Now here is where the competing positions come in, because responsible coverage requires both. Bart Edmonston Jr.'s attorney, Russell Latino, went on News Nation and called the enhanced recording doctored. He said it was a fabricated transcript paired with garbled audio, specifically engineered to cause listeners to hear words that do not exist in the original recording. He said there was no legitimacy to it. So you now have a forensics expert flagging a documented 20-second discrepancy and asking to see the original file, and you have the attorney for one of the key witnesses calling the enhanced version an outright fabrication. Both of those positions are on the record. Neither has been officially resolved, and sitting underneath both of them is one question that nobody has cleanly answered. If Nolan was not on that boat, if he had already been left on Horn Island before the call was made, then what were the people on that boat so alarmed about? That question has not been answered. Not officially. Not publicly. The day that audio became public, things on the Friends side began moving fast. Within days of the recording circulating widely, the family of Bart Edmonston Jr. released a formal public statement through their attorney. The statement said Bart had cooperated with investigators from the very beginning. No warrants, no attorney present during his early statements, no hesitation. They said he gave statements voluntarily. They said he allowed investigators to examine his phone, inspect his boat, and review his GPS device. And they said he had compiled a list of more than 20 witnesses, individuals who were on two separate boats and who could place him near Horn Island in circumstances consistent with his account of that day. More than 20 witnesses. That list was apparently available since July 4th. It was not part of the public conversation in the first week after Nolan's body was found. It was not surfaced in week 2. It became part of the public record through a formal attorney statement released specifically in the days after the audio controversy erupted. Bart's family has a clear explanation for that timing. They have said their silence up to that point was out of respect for Nolan's family, and that position is documented and on the record. That same week, Bart Edmonston Jr.'s legal team also filed a cease and desist letter against a social media creator named Kimra Lee. The letter accused her of spreading false and defamatory claims that Bart was involved in Nolan's death or had participated in covering it up. That legal filing is documented. In the same window of days, a formal public statement was released, a witness list was surfaced publicly for the first time, and a cease and desist letter was filed against someone asking questions online. Lawyering up is an absolute constitutional right. Responding to what someone believes are false accusations is an absolute constitutional right. That has to be said clearly. But the sequence of those moves, in that specific week, following the release of that specific audio, is a pattern that this investigation is now factoring into its broader picture. Every one of the 4 key figures in this case, Warren Hudson, Wyatt Pyron, Tristine Shepard, and Bart Edmonston Jr., is now either operating through formal legal statements, has retained counsel, or is actively taking legal action against people who are publicly questioning their account of July 4th. Again, that is their right. And again, the questions surrounding what happened that day have not gone away. There is another person in this case whose account carries enormous weight, and that person is Katie McCormick. She is the young woman that Nolan's friends said he chose to stay behind with. She is the name attached to the reason they gave for leaving him on that island. She has since broken her silence, and what she has said about what actually happened on Horn Island that day directly contradicts the version of events that the friends provided to investigators. Her account is described by those who have heard it as heartbreaking. The specific details of what she says happened will be central to where this investigation goes next. What matters in the context of this piece is that the person the friends named as the reason Nolan stayed does not agree with the story they told. Now here is where this case takes a turn that is impossible to dismiss. When Nolan's mother, Christine Wesley, finally received his phone back, she and her sister went through it together. Nolan had 2 Snapchat accounts. Both of them were completely empty. No photos, no videos, no content from July 4th, nothing within the platform's own 24-hour window before content automatically deletes. Christine Wesley described this on Good Morning America herself. She said she knew her son. She said that when he was out having fun, when he was with people, when something good was happening, he made videos. He documented it, he shared it. She said there was absolutely nothing on either account. Attorney Ben Crump, who is representing the family in this matter, flagged the empty accounts publicly as deeply suspicious. When one of Nolan's friends was asked about the phone, that friend said, and this is on the record, that no one was in contact with Nolan's phone until it was moved from the boat to a truck, and that none of them had access to Nolan's password and could not have deleted anything from his accounts. But Christine Wesley also had access to Life 360, the family location sharing app that had been running on Nolan's phone, and when she compared the location history logged by Life 360 against the location data associated with his Snapchat accounts on that same device, the 2 datasets did not match. Same phone, 2 applications, different location stories. Christine Wesley described that discrepancy herself, publicly, on Good Morning America. That is not a rumor. That is a documented factual inconsistency described by Nolan's mother from data on his own phone. On July 28th, civil attorney Gary Bufkin filed formal civil subpoenas. Those subpoenas were served to Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Life 360. Each company was given 21 days from receipt to produce Nolan's complete digital record. The subpoenas are requesting every message, every photo, every video, every IP address tied to every login, every location timestamp, and every action ever taken on his accounts. The significance of IP address data specifically cannot be overstated. If anyone accessed Nolan's accounts from a device or location they were not supposed to be using, that action was logged. It sits in a server right now. A court has formally asked for it. The friend group's position is clear and on the record. Nobody touched that phone. Nobody had his password. The phone traveled from the boat to a truck, and from the truck to Christine Wesley's hands, without interference from anyone. What the subpoena data will actually show is now the single most anticipated development in this entire case. The FBI has been involved in reviewing digital evidence in this investigation from early on. Their involvement is tied directly to Horn Island's status as federal land. Oceanic engineers are currently running tide and current analysis connected to how and where Nolan's body ended up. Ben Crump's audio engineers are working through the full, unredacted version of the SeaTow call. This investigation is not winding down. It is expanding. Here is where everything that has emerged stands right now. The Life 360 location data and the Snapchat location data from the same device tell different stories, and that discrepancy has never been explained. Both of Nolan's Snapchat accounts were empty in a way that his mother says is completely inconsistent with who he was. The enhanced audio has a documented 20-second discrepancy from the official release and has not been officially authenticated. Katie McCormick's account of what happened on Horn Island that day contradicts what the friends told investigators, and a witness list of more than 20 people that was apparently available since July 4th did not surface publicly until after the audio controversy broke. Every single one of those points is documented. None of them have been resolved. Data does not forget. Servers do not lie. IP addresses are indifferent to press statements and attorney responses. Whatever those servers hold, a court has now asked for it, and 21 days is not a long time. The story that was given to investigators by the group who was with Nolan that day was built around a single explanation. They said Nolan chose to stay. They said he wanted to remain on Horn Island to spend time with Katie McCormick. She was the reason. She was the answer to why they left without him. That explanation did a specific job in the early days of this case. It made Nolan's presence on that island after the group departed seem voluntary. It made his separation from the group seem like his own decision. Katie McCormick has since spoken publicly about what she says actually happened on Horn Island. Her account does not support the version the friends gave to investigators. What she has described is a situation that was not calm, not casual, and not the result of Nolan choosing to stay behind for a relaxed conversation on the beach. The specific content of her account is detailed and documented, and what it establishes is a picture of Nolan's final hours on that island that is fundamentally different from the picture his friends painted for investigators. When two accounts of the same event from people who were present at the same location diverge this completely, investigators do not get to ignore one of them. The civil legal team representing Nolan's family is not ignoring it, and the investigative bodies that now have jurisdiction over this case are not ignoring it either. Katie McCormick did not stay silent forever, and the story she chose to tell when she finally spoke is a story that puts direct pressure on every element of the friends' version of that day. Now let's go back to the phone, because the phone is where this case has produced its most concrete and undeniable documented discrepancies. Christine Wesley received Nolan's phone after his body was recovered. She went through it carefully. Nolan had two separate Snapchat accounts, and when she opened them, both were empty. Not partially cleared, not filtered, completely empty. No content from July 4th. No content from the hours surrounding it. Nothing that should have been there from a celebration on an island with hundreds of people on one of the biggest party days of the summer. Christine Wesley did not simply feel that was unusual. She said publicly that it was impossible to reconcile with who her son was. She knew how he used his phone. She knew how he documented his life. An 18-year-old at a 4th of July gathering on Horn Island leaving zero digital trace on two separate social media accounts is not a pattern. It is an absence that demands an explanation. One of Nolan's friends provided that explanation on the record. He said that no one was in contact with Nolan's phone until it was moved from the boat to a truck. He said that none of the group had access to Nolan's password. He said no one could have deleted anything because no one could have gotten into the accounts. That is their position. It is documented, and it now sits directly alongside a civil subpoena demanding that Snapchat produce every login, every IP address, every timestamp, and every action ever taken on both of those accounts. Here is what that means in practical terms. If those accounts were accessed after July 4th by anyone, from any device, using any connection, that action was recorded on Snapchat's servers. The time it happened was recorded. The IP address of the device used was recorded. The location associated with that IP address was recorded. A court has formally requested all of that information. The 21-day response window is active. When that data comes back, it will either confirm that those accounts sat untouched exactly as the friends claim, or it will show something else entirely. There is no middle ground in server data. It happened or it did not. The Life 360 discrepancy deserves its own examination because it is a separate data point from the Snapchat issue, and together they represent two independent streams of digital evidence pointing at the same problem. Life 360 is a family location sharing application. Christine Wesley had it running on Nolan's phone. After she received the phone back, she compared the location history that Life 360 had logged against the location information associated with Nolan's Snapchat accounts on that same device. The two datasets did not tell the same story, same phone, same hardware. Two different applications logging two different location histories for the same device on the same day. Christine Wesley described that discrepancy on Good Morning America. She did not describe it as a suspicion or a feeling. She described it as something she observed directly by comparing two sets of data. The subpoena filed by attorney Gary Bufkin on July 28 targets Life 360 specifically, requesting the full location data history tied to Nolan's account. When Life 360 produces that data, and it sits next to whatever Snapchat produces, investigators and the civil legal team will have two independent verified location records to compare against everything the friends have said about where Nolan's phone was, who had it, and when. That kind of cross-platform data comparison does not leave much room for interpretation. Either the records align with the friend's account or they do not. The companies have been served. The clock is running. The SeaTow audio has continued to be one of the most contested pieces of evidence in the public space surrounding this case, and it is worth examining exactly where that controversy stands right now. The version officially released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources on July 26th captures Wyatt Pyron reporting a sinking boat with 7 people on board, all in good condition, near the west tip of Horn Island. That is the documented official record of that call, and it is not disputed. The enhanced version released by TMZ runs 20 seconds longer than the state's official release. That discrepancy is documented. Digital forensics expert Robert Freridid flagged it on News Nation and stated he needed to examine the original file metadata before forming any conclusions about authenticity. The family's legal team, which includes Ben Crump, has audio engineers who are now working through the full unredacted version of that call. Their work is ongoing. Bart Edmonston Jr.'s attorney, Russell Latino, has called the TMZ version doctored and has said publicly that it was manufactured to make listeners hear words that do not exist. That is his stated position, and it is on the record. What has not happened is an official, independent, court-recognized forensic authentication of either version. That authentication is what the investigation now needs, and it is what the family's legal team is actively working toward. Until that authentication exists, the audio remains contested. What does not remain contested is the documented fact that the runtime discrepancy between the two versions exists. That gap has not been explained by anyone. Now let's talk about the timing of information in this case, because it is one of the most telling patterns in the entire public record. Nolan's body was recovered on July 6th. The investigation began immediately. In the days that followed, the public narrative was shaped almost entirely by what the friends said happened. Nolan stayed. He wanted to be with Katie. They left. That was the story. For weeks, that was the story that existed in the public space, alongside the growing questions from Nolan's family. The witness list of more than 20 people compiled by Bart Edmonston Jr. allegedly existed from the beginning. His family has said it was always there. They have said their choice not to surface it publicly in the early weeks was made out of respect for Nolan's family during a period of grief. That is their explanation, and it is documented. But here is what is also documented. That witness list did not become part of the public record until after the SeaTow audio became public and created serious pressure on the friends' accounts. The formal statement, the surfaced witness list, and the cease and desist against Kimra Lee all appeared in the same compressed window of days following the audio's public release. The family has an explanation for that sequence. The investigation will ultimately determine whether that explanation holds. What is certain is that the sequence itself is now part of the documented record of how information has moved in this case. The investigative structure surrounding Nolan's death has grown significantly since his body was recovered. The state autopsy has been completed, and while those results remain sealed, a grand jury process is now part of the legal landscape of this case. The FBI's involvement, tied to Horn Island's federal land status, means that digital evidence collected in this investigation is being reviewed at a federal level. That is not a minor detail. Federal investigators have access to resources, databases, and legal tools that extend well beyond what a state-level investigation can deploy independently. Oceanic engineers are running tide and current analysis, specifically examining the movement of water around Horn Island during the relevant window of time surrounding July 4th. That analysis is designed to address questions about where Nolan entered the water, how his body moved after that, and whether the location where he was found is consistent with the circumstances his friends described. Current and tide modeling is a forensic science, and the conclusions it produces are not subject to interpretation in the way that human testimony is. Ben Crump's team is working simultaneously on the audio front. His audio engineers are not working from a social media upload. They are working through the full, unredacted SeaTow call, which means that whatever the original recording contains, people whose professional expertise is in audio forensics are now listening to it with the kind of tools and methodology that hold up in legal proceedings. This investigation is being attacked from multiple directions at once: digital forensics, audio forensics, oceanographic modeling, federal oversight, civil subpoenas targeting 5 major technology platforms, and a witness account from Katie McCormick that contradicts the foundational explanation the friends gave for why Nolan was left on that island. Here is where everything stands, stated plainly and without embellishment. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He went to Horn Island on the 4th of July with people he trusted. His mother has said he was the kind of person who documented his life when he was happy, and there is no documentation from that day. His phone came back with 2 empty accounts and a location data conflict between 2 separate applications. The friends who were with him gave investigators an account that the last person confirmed to have been with Nolan on that island does not corroborate. The audio from the boat that day has a documented discrepancy that has not been officially resolved. A witness list of more than 20 people existed before any of this became public, but did not surface publicly until after the audio created pressure. Civil subpoenas are active. Federal investigators are involved. Forensic analysis is ongoing. Every one of those statements is supported by the public record. Not one of them requires speculation, and not one of them has a clean, verified, complete explanation attached to it. Data does not grieve. Data does not protect anyone. Data does not care what a press statement says or how carefully a legal response was worded. Whatever is sitting in the servers at Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Life360 right now, it has been there since July 4th. It recorded what it recorded. A court has asked for it, and it is coming. Nolan Xavier Wells deserves the full truth. His mother deserves the full truth. And the people watching this who have refused to look away deserve to know that the truth is being pursued by people who are not going to stop. This story is not finished. We are not finished. If you are part of the movement to make sure Nolan gets justice, go to the comment section right now and type "Justice for Nolan Wells." Let his name be seen. Let it be counted. Subscribe to True Crime Revealed so you are here for every single update as this investigation moves forward. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs to know what is happening, because the more people who are paying attention, the harder it becomes for the truth to stay buried. We will be here. We are not going anywhere, and neither is Nolan's name.